Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we dig in deep to analyze the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. I'm Andy Nelson from thenextreel.com.
And I'm Pete Wright, also from The Next Reel.
We are, of course, back talking about Jon Favreau's 2008 film, Iron Man. And back for us one last time is Heidi Bennett from the Vibrant Visionaries podcast.
I'm still here.
Still here.
Heidi. Lurking.
And now I'm part of your Discord family, so I'll really be lurking.
That's right.
It's very exciting.
That's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
Never leave.
Well, today we are digging into minute 21, which starts with Abu asking Tony to build him a Jericho missile and ends with Tony getting a lay of the land. We were talking about translations last time. It's pretty close here. The wonderful folks on Reddit Translator told me that Abu says, "Make me a Jericho rocket that you're presenting to the people," which is pretty much what Yinsen says. And then this does not get translated as he brings the piece of paper, which, as we learn, is a photo of the Jericho rocket. As he brings it over to Yinsen, he says, "Put your hands down. Explain to him." So that's an extra little bit of Arabic that was translated that we didn't have Yinsen translate. So
interesting.
Yeah.
I think it would have been better if it had been a picture of soup.
A picture of soup.
Or his recipe.
Right? It's his recipe.
You know, it's interesting.
Explain to him why you can't make this
I
stew.
knew this was going to be a photo because I've been watching this minute over and over again, and yet my brain still replaced it with it being like blueprints to something. So interesting how the brain works.
It is really funny. I absolutely understand that. And I think the same thing happened to me. I actually had to stop and freeze this minute on the picture. And as I'm looking at it, it still looks like a classic Ford.
Well, I think every time I saw it, it actually, and again, I had never freeze framed it until starting this podcast. I always thought it was a jet in the air that happened to like have the missiles like under its wings, like it was armed with them. And it wasn't until I freeze framed it.
Looks kind of like an SR-71, right?
Well, it's like it's that big unit that they had on the ground that had like the 3 missiles, and that's what it's a photo. But yeah, right. I totally thought that's. I mean, in my head, you get to stare at it for such a short period of time. It just looks like a jet.
Yeah, it's very cool. So we get to see now when he says, "No, I'm not going to build that thing," and there is a very quick cut to now we're getting into some little bit of torture, a little bit of light torture for Tony.
Well, and
it's Tony's torture.
Before we get into the torture, this is that interesting thing that I brought up in the script yesterday, and I want to get both of your takes on this. So yesterday, I read from you guys the script and how Yinsen is the one who tells Tony, "Listen to me. Whatever they ask, you refuse. You understand? You must refuse." We don't get that in the film, and what instead happens is Yinsen translates for Tony, and then Tony is the one who says, "I refuse." What do you guys think of that as far as the difference between script and finished film?
Because Yinsen does say mostly just do what I do or something like that, right?
Right. He says, "Do what I do. Put your arms up."
Right.
Put your hands up. Right.
So yeah, he's only influencing him, it appears, to say like, this is the safest way to deal with these guys is what is sort of implied, right? Just follow my lead. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. What do you think, Pete?
Well, I like it because it gives us a chance to see the steely-eyed Tony, because what we've seen so far is Tony the showman, Tony the fun guy to have at a party, but here we get to see Tony, who is a survivor, and now he's Tony the badass, and we kind of get another new bent on Tony. Where he is standing up to an obvious aggressor and threat.
Well, and I think that's why I like the change that they made in the film versus the script, because it takes that decision to refuse out of Yinsen's mouth and it puts it directly into Tony's head. And it's him absorbing this situation and making that decision. And just like you said, this is that Tony Stark. Not only is he a great scientist and all that, but he's a tough businessman. And I think that it makes him a much stronger character by doing that and by refusing right here.
Right. That's where we need that to be. That's where we need that aggression. It needs to come out of his mouth, right? We need to see that, as part of his character transformation, not owned by a secondary character whose future is as yet unknown.
Okay, what I'm gathering through all of this too is, so in previous minutes before I joined you fellas, we see for a flash that when he is part of the explosion that happens, that it's a Stark bomb, right?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a Stark Industries bomb, right?
We don't know that he wouldn't have seen that because he was in the car, right?
No,
or in the Jeep. Or did he see it?
Right. He gets out of the Jeep because the everything is happening. The attack is happening. He jumps out.
Or missile, is that what it is?
He jumps out and hides behind a rock, and then a missile lands in the ground right next to him. And it doesn't go off right away. He jumps up and tries to get away from it, and then it explodes. But before it explodes, he sees along the side of it, it says Stark Industries.
Okay, and then the second part of that is, I believe, in the last minute, which we didn't specifically say, is that doesn't he say, those are Stark guns, how did they get my guns, or something like that?
Yeah.
So as far as he knows now, so far, there's two things on the opposite side, the opposition, that are saying these guys, for some reason, have my equipment. And now they're also asking me to build more of my equipment for them.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Okay. Just trying to piece it all together. And so he so far doesn't know how or why, but he's getting all these indicators that they want his stuff. They use his stuff already. For as far as he knows, they have gotten it in some nefarious back channel way. And he's standing in his, you were saying businessman, but I was thinking I'm doing this for the United States or the all American. I kind of forgot how patriotic the beginning of this movie was, how, stars and stripesy he was. So do you think it has to do more with him and what he does, or what he represents as, this is, me as an American businessman?
That's a really interesting take on it. I don't think, in watching the minutes so far, that I got the perspective that Tony was explicitly patriotic, rather that he was much more just sort of selfish, and that he was saying the words. I never really bought that he was saying the words about, that's how Dad did it, that's how America does it, saying the word America kind of out of the side of his mouth, because he's a global arms manufacturer. What does he care whether America buys his weapons or somebody else? Do you know what I mean? I never got this as a patriotic endeavor for him. Maybe I'm wrong.
It's never brought up explicitly in the beginning, other than the fact that, he obviously is working with Rhodey, who is his liaison with the military, and he's here showing the military these new weapons and everything. We don't know if Tony has stuff elsewhere. Is he dealing with other people around the world, under whether it's out in the open or not? We don't have that sense. But this minute, to me, makes it clear that, or these last couple minutes, really make it clear that he has not been doing any of that. Because as you pointed out, he looks at those weapons. He's like, those are my guns. Why do these guys have my guns? And he sees that missile land next to him. All of this is very off-putting to him, and I think that's an interesting element to throw in here. I've never read that he's being explicitly patriotic here. I just feel like he's steeling himself mentally to be kind of the tough guy now.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, that question comes back then to the comic. Was the comic, and I imagine having been written at a different time, is the comic any more explicitly patriotic about this character?
His character really was very much a part of the military. He wasn't like a military man or anything, but very much. He was over there selling, he was demonstrating stuff for these guys. They were very much partners in all the different things that he was always trying to make for them. And he would demonstrate all the little things that he was doing to the military. I never got a sense that he was a shady arms dealer. Just the fact that he was always working with the U.S. military, that always came across pretty clearly. And I think what Stan Lee and company were banking on with him was the fact that he was an arms dealer while also being this kind of crass, rich playboy, totally against what everything that their comic readers at the time were interested in. And then they turned him into a superhero. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, isn't that interesting then that it's my cynicism? Because I don't see him as like a dirty arms dealer. I see him as a businessman first, and he happens to be a weapons manufacturer. And that his allegiance is going to be to Stark Industries before country. And so that's what I'm mostly curious about is like, how has that evolved for this character over the decades that we've had this character? Because I don't see, I see Tony as his allegiance to himself, to his company, and to his technology. And so I think it's interesting that is also in my head part of of his transformation, that he becomes this character who's willing to give of himself for country, for king and country, for S.H.I.E.L.D., over the long arc of history. And I think that is one of the things that makes him this moment in time so interesting to me.
Yeah, and I didn't just automatically say, "Oh, how patriotic of him."
Yeah, right. I totally spun those words right back into your mouth. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I just kind of questioned why when he says, "No, I won't make this for you." Then are you saying because I mean, what if he said, "Sure, for $50 million or however, whatever the price is for it"?
That's the question. That's exactly right. Like, at what point in Tony's history would he have said yes to that deal?
Yeah. So I guess that's my question. And I'd love to know, what the listeners think about this. Why does he say no? What is his motivation? I was curious.
Yeah. It opens it up to make a much more rich scene to have him refuse right here, I think. And I am curious how people read that and how people read it who are familiar with the comics and people who aren't. Is there a difference? So, yeah, very interesting little bit here.
So can we talk about Tony's torture hour?
Yes. And then we get to do the crazy torture. So yes, what were you going to say about that?
Well, because I learned something that I had never noticed in watching this movie 1 minute at a time.
Okay.
And that is, as he's splashing around, so he's got the soldiers are, pushing his head underwater, and they pull him up, and he gasps and wheezes. And intercut into the gasping and wheezy parts, we get two very, very, very fast cuts to the magnet thing in his chest, right?
Yep, the electromagnet.
And the first time we get, it's like, I don't know, it's just a little cutaway. We don't necessarily get, there's nothing like going on with it. And then the second time, or there's a little shock to it, right? You feel it like you can feel a shock as he's being electrocuted, whether it's, interacting with the water or whatever. And the second time we get that the cutaway, it's to something else. Right? It's to something else that we haven't seen before. The new piece to me is that it was the torture, that this is a trope, right? This is a trope that we get in these movies where somebody gains power or ability thanks to being pushed to some new place that they've never been pushed before. And this was that experience for Tony, that he gets this mix of being tortured and, I will hazard a guess, somehow shocked or electrocuted, that the combination of all of these forces led him to a new insight that he had never before. And that is something that we get to see play out, in later in the film. Maybe. Do you see does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's a quick flash of what we will later learn is basically the mini arc reactor.
See, you did it.
I know.
I'm trying to
I know you're dancing. You're dancing.
House it in mystery. and you're just out saying it.
I know. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible person.
It does not exist yet.
It doesn't. And that is a great thing, because it's like, is this, like you said, is this the impetus? Is this what Tony needed to come up with the whole design idea?
Well, and that's my question. Did you see this that way? Because I have never, as many times as I've seen this movie, I've never actually noticed those two cutaways.
I don't know if I have either, but I definitely noticed it as I was going through this. The fact that we see a glimpse of something that is not in his chest. Like, what is the thing that we're seeing here? It's a fascinating moment to see. And something that I don't understand why it's in here is we get a very echoey scream of his name from Pepper, hearing her say, Tony! When we get a shot, the second time we cut to the actual electromagnet, which is the reflection in the little mirror. And I find that interesting that we connect the moment for him to Pepper screaming his name in kind of in shock or horror.
What is that all about? Like, what business does he have seeing the future? Is there ever any sort of play with time in the comics? Should I know something here?
He has time traveled.
Of course he's time traveled.
Yes, it's
the
world of the comics, yes.
I don't know. What do you think, Heidi?
I'll tell you. I didn't really, and this is pretty typical for me, like, I didn't do a slowdown of this, and it's pretty typical for me to kind of not notice when things are really quick cut, that there was something, except for that actor that's the foreign to hear.
Right, foreign to hear. Right.
Yeah, that I just saw his face, and then I was like, wait a minute, he's not part of that group. And that was the only
thing. He was in Star Trek.
But that was the only thing I didn't notice the other stuff that shall not be named, but was already just named.
Because of Andy. Yeah, let's say it out loud.
Yeah. But I recognized his, he has such a distinctive look, that I recognized him and was like, why am I seeing him? But that was as far as I went.
It's an interesting moment that we do glimpse Ferranta here. He's, of course, playing Raza. I'm not going to go into him too much because he's really just in that little flash. We'll talk about him when we finally get his real introduction, because we've seen him before in the scene earlier, right before the title, when he's the one who's reading the Urdu. He's speaking in Urdu, and he's the one addressing the camera.
Gotcha.
But here we just get that little. He stands behind this torture, and he just has such a great creepy look on his face, and that great cutaway of him is so quick. I think this is just a fascinating and beautifully done montage that gives us a lot, and I really do like this idea that this is the moment that kind of that electrical shocks or whatever it is that's giving Tony the idea of what to do next.
Yeah, I love that idea. And it's one of those bits of exploration that changes the way I see this movie and see this character. That his power, that there may be more to his power than the suit. That somehow this experience gave him a new way to unlock a bit of himself, to see something that we don't see.
It's the ability to see the future.
But do you know what I mean? Like, okay, yeah, there is a gag in there, and I missed it. But look, the thing that I feel like is so important to me about this sequence and why I'm kind of hanging on to it is because I've always had this challenge. As much as I love Iron Man, the character, I've always had this challenge that it could be anyone in the suit, right? Any Tom, Dick, or Harry off the street could jump in the suit, and if the suit's smart enough, it could be great. Why Tony? And this sequence for me, I almost feel like it's so subtle that they didn't lean in hard enough to it. This sequence attempts to answer for me why Tony. Why is it important that Tony's the guy in the suit? And I love having that, at least an attempt to answer that question.
It's nice that it's here. And I love the fact that it's done in this little flashy montage. And it's so subtle, but I think it ends up working really nicely.
Yeah.
Some other people that we
let me just say, you don't seem nearly as excited about it as I am. And so
you can't fake it. You just can't fake it.
You can't fake it. Yeah, no. You just don't seem nearly as excited about this new discovery that I am. And I'm going to need you to amp it up a little bit.
That is the best thing I've heard on this show yet, Pete.
There
21 episodes.
There you go.
That was what I needed.
Andy,
Thank you.
That's an awakening that we just experienced.
Clearly it was. Clearly. In the torture scene, and then following it, we do see a few other people. We have, it's so hard to tell who these people are, but I believe some of the faces that we see John Braver, and it's either Ben Bray or Brian Simpson. I have a hard time telling which. Both of these guys are other guards, and what's interesting, and I think this is something that speaks to how people end up getting these roles when it's for an action film. They're both credited, actually all three are credited as utility stunts players. And I think that's what ends up happening is they need stunt people because they know they're going to be having a big battle scene at some point. So let's bring the stunt guys in, they can play these bit parts, and then when we blow everything up at some point, they're going to be the ones that are on all the rigs and getting blown up and whatnot. So I think that's pretty cool.
I do too. I am so enthusitic about that note, Andy. I'm coming out of my skin. That is fantastic.
I love stunt people. I mean, really, I'm not doing a bit like Pete.
No,
stunt people
I just
are
can't
the
tell
best.
anymore.
Like in there weren't really much to do about stunt people in Spinal Tap, but The Cabin in the Woods.
There's some big
wonderful,
stunts.
and there are people who are playing really juicy roles because the people who play the zombie characters, those are big meaty roles, but most of them are professional, stunt folk, men and women, and it's really fun to watch them, and then I've followed several of them on on Twitter and Instagram now, and just wonderful people that are very adventurous and exciting to follow along on social media.
Oh, definitely.
So cool.
John Braver, it looks like he's the one who's doing the dunking on the right. His 4 IMDb top credits are Iron Man, The Kingdom, The Dark Knight Rises, and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Lots of stunt work, though. He's very much a stunt guy.
Was he the ant guy?
I don't know. That is an interesting question, and I don't have the answer to that. But yes, I don't know if he's one who is devoured by the ants. What a horrible thing to
Feels
have to
like
be.
something
No,
I'd like to know.
He was credited or uncredited, but he was the staff car driver. So there you go.
Oh, okay. So no ants.
Although it could have been a driver. Now that I said it, I don't. It was all during the driving scene. So
yeah.
The other person, I couldn't tell which one it was, but if it's Ben Bray, his 4 top IMDb credits are Star Trek, the 2009 revisioning, Iron Man, The Gray, fantastic film, and Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, all for stunt work.
It's like both of these guys. They have 3 great movies and then the other one.
Isn't that what the IMDb thing does, though, right? It always does that. The last of the potential guys is Brian Simpson, and his 4 are Ant-Man, interestingly, the most recent Ghostbusters film, which now, are they crediting it this way now? Ghostbusters Answer the Call? Like, is that how...
What?
That's what IMDb credits it as, Ghostbusters Answer the Call.
Weird.
I didn't realize that.
That's weird. That sounds like a short.
You're right, exactly. The other 2 are Triple X, Return of Xander Cage, and interestingly, Predator, the original Predator, all the way back in 87.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there you go. Those are our stunt guys. And of course, this is the moment we go from our cave set, which was built on the studio and refrigerated to keep it nice and chilly for them, to the cave exterior. And this exterior, of course, was filmed back out by the Lone Pines area. This is the cave exterior was shot east of the dry Owens Lake, and it's along the Cerro Gordo Road, somewhere between CA 136 in the town of Keeler and the Cerro Gordo ghost town. And this was a very popular filming location back in the day, in the old, when all the old Westerns were getting shot and everything.
Ghost town.
Yeah.
Don't hear much about those anymore.
What's funny is I was reading about that ghost town and somebody bought it and they were trying to, like, I can't remember. It was this huge story, weirdly, about this buying this ghost town and mining in there and stuff and trying to bring back its popularity. And it sounded like it failed because it was up for sale again, if you're interested in buying it.
Really?
Yep.
That feels like an investment that's worth considering.
Let's do it.
Sure.
Could really do something with that.
I have a friend, I have several friends actually who have investigated and gone and stayed in various ghost towns, and sort of done, I guess you don't call it urban exploring, but done ghost towning exploring. And one of my friends, he actually even published a zine that was about him exploring these ghost towns, and the whole zine was just about ghost towns.
That's awesome. I feel like there's a future for us. Like we could, it's a whole podcast, ghosty podcast thing. We have I'm telling you, Andy, I'm checking out Zillow.
I'm into it.
I'm all of a sudden worried about where this is going. What can of worms have I just opened up?
Once again, it's all your fault.
Yes. As I'm learning more and more with every episode. Oh, anything else from this minute, you guys?
I don't think so. Not for me.
Not for me.
Are you sure?
I'm just looking at it and I'm still getting this. I don't know if it's because I just watched Mary Shelley, that movie, but I'm getting a Frankenstein. I keep like the running, the water, I don't know. I keep getting back to this Frankenstein's monster thing, which I don't know why, but
I love that that's the direction that you're going, though.
Yeah, the chaos and the darkness and him looking at himself in the mirror and the water. I don't know why the water. I don't remember Frankenstein's monster being, dunked in the worst apple bobbing situation ever. But something about all this chaos gives me anyways.
It is like a birthing, right? The kind of the coming out of the water and having the idea from that. So it is kind of an interesting element. So something to definitely consider.
Well, and we get the same kind of rebirth through light, right? The second he comes out of the cave and we have that bright light as they remove the bag from his head. That too is another kind of symbol from out of the darkness into the light.
Oh, and by the way, Abu actually says, take that thing off his head. There's a little more translation for you.
There's a little bit of your Reddit translation.
Right.
Way to go.
Yeah, see?
That was totally worth it.
It was worth it. I'm glad I did
it. See, you can't trust anybody anymore, Andy. I was being honest. You thought I was being sarcastic. I'm in your corner, man. I'm really in your corner.
Hey, we didn't bring this up when we were looking at the photo earlier, but I was asking myself, where did they get this photo? It's a solid photo. It's like they're close up next to it. Is this a photo they stole? Did somebody give them this photo? Did they buy it from somebody? Did they find it on the internet? Where did it come from? I was so impressed. They had such a high quality picture. It's not even like a distant photo of it through like a telephoto lens. It's like, hey, we're standing right next to this Jericho missile. Look at this photo of it.
Yeah, totally. Like it's like they were right there. I wouldn't have been any more surprised had it actually been a picture of Tony that afternoon standing next to the Jericho missile.
Well, Heidi, as we like to do when we're bidding adieu to our guests, we like to talk to them about their favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe films. I know it's a huge list, so we aren't having everybody go through all of them and rank them or anything like that. But we definitely want to know what are your faves of the 20 films that have been released so far.
The number one for me is, and I hope in 50 years you'll have me back to talk about this. Whenever it'll be, is
that checks out.
Black Panther. I absolutely loved that movie and could talk about it for hours. There's a lot of, I live in Oakland, California, so there's some real deep Oakland pride. The director also went to college in Sacramento, and I also lived in Sacramento, so I feel a real affinity, there. But I think from the music to the family relationships to the complicated right or wrong and good guy, bad guy stuff there. I mean, the costuming, the strong, powerful women, the holding our technology and culture tight versus the compassion of sharing it with the world and trusting that that's the best way to go, to me is the message for all time. So the humor, the fact that I think it was also kind of a James Bond movie at certain points. I mean, I could go on forever. So Black Panther is at the top for me. But I loved Thor Ragnarok and generally liked the Thor movies, like the second one. I don't even barely remember it, but I always liked the thread of humor going through those. And really enjoyed the first Guardians of the Galaxy a ton. And actually, yeah, I mean, there's a ton of others that I enjoyed, but those are kind of, I guess, my tippity tops.
Those are definitely good ones to put way up there at the top of the list.
Gonna be a while before we have you back.
Oh
though.
my God! Okay, well, I really liked Captain America. I really enjoyed the Captain America ones as well. But yeah, those ones are those are my super top ones. And what I was going to mention, I have no promises here, but I mentioned a couple episodes back, that I had gone to the Fantastic Fest, and I briefly met and chatted with Nicole Perlman, who is a co-writer for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Totally.
And also Captain Marvel. So I talked with her briefly. I have the contact information for her representation, and I have emailed with them. So I'm hoping that maybe I can get a chat with her in the future. So no promises, but I'll let you know if that comes to fruition, because I'd certainly love to talk with her and just
she is just wonderful. We've talked about her a little bit when we actually talked about Guardians of the Galaxy, but she's one of those screenwriters that just absolutely has her finger on the pulse of properties that we grew up with, right? I mean, if you look at not just what she's done, Guardians of the Galaxy and Raising a Ruckus, and Captain Marvel, but like what she has in production and the treatments that she's written for Pokemon, Detective Pikachu, Black Widow. She did the treatment for Black Widow. Who knows if she'll get that? Knights of the Magical Light, Visionaries, Knights of the Magical Light, and here, Mask, Mobile Armored Strike Command just lights me up. Not only that, I mean, what has been announced is that she's behind Labyrinth, the remake of Labyrinth, and she wrote the screenplay for that with Jay Basu. So she's amazing. That would be quite a coup.
I'll do what I can, guys. I'll really do what I can. And then just another thing in the Marvel world too is that because of my husband, I have gained a ability to be more patient of things turning into something I might enjoy. And as an example, I thought the first season of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was rather snore-worthy, and I stuck around, and then it became one of my favorite shows ever. So,
good for you. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, I totally agree.
Pete was happy to hear that I finally started watching it. I never got into the idea of watching that show until after some of the Netflix Marvel shows came out, and then I was like, I should give that one a try. And so I'm still in the middle of the first season. Like you said, it's a little bit of a slog, but I'm still enjoying it. It's something that I will continue pushing through as we continue working on this show. I've got plenty of years.
Well, you will be richly, richly rewarded. I promise you.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I hear it gets a little crazy in a few, I think around season 6 or so, when they're like in space or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. They go to a lot of crazy places. But yeah, I mean, talk about an ensemble cast with a huge variety of people of color and, women and all sorts of, different folks. I mean, it's so many strong and richly written characters. And I'm somebody who doesn't, the comics that I read were in the 90s alternative comic scene. So I wasn't a person who was getting into these comics. So I'm meeting all these characters for the first time visually.
Right.
And I just love it. Absolutely love them. And I love the fact, that the Agent Coulson, came out of, oh my God, everybody loved and responded to this guy so much in the movies, we cannot have him die. Right. Right. In fact, we're going to do a whole series around it. I also loved Agent Carter, Marvel's Agent Carter.
It was disappointing. It was.
Yeah, that's one another one I'm looking forward to watching because I really did enjoy her character.
So there's my Marvel 2 cents.
Well, that's fantastic. Heidi, thank you so much for joining us on these episodes. I had such a great time chatting with you. You were just an absolute delight.
Aw, thanks. I feel the same, and I look forward to chatting with you guys again and in real life somewhere out there at our ghost town enclave and online as well.
I sent you guys the link, by the way, so you guys could check it out.
Cool.
I got to start making
You could
plans.
buy this surprisingly cheap California ghost town.
Worth every penny.
Oh, yes. Well, Heidi, again, where should people find you?
So you can find me at vibrantvisionaries.com. I'm also on Instagram at Vibrant Visionaries. On Twitter, it's Vibrant Vizcast. And for my coaching and anything else, you can find me at HeidiBennett.com. HeidiBennett. And and then, of course, if anybody wants to check out whatever other Movies by Minutes podcasts are out there, they can go to moviesbyminutes.com. I always like to remind people they can check that out, and if they're loving this and want to go see what else is there.
Great tip.
My goodness, there is a plethora.
Yes.
Well, that is it, everybody, for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the show for free at marvelmovieminute.com. Join us over in our Discord chat room and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Next Reel. If you like what we do and you want to support us and get some cool stuff, why don't you become a patron over at patreon.com/thenextreel. Thanks, everybody. Until next time, true believers.